The ICEVI, the Nippon Foundation Mathematics Package for Teachers. Title of the video, Circles Touching Internally. Let us take two circles, one big and other small, and we fold the circles horizontally and vertically and get the center of it. Similarly, take the small circle, fold it horizontally and vertically, make tactile creases and mark the center of it. Now there are three situations which we can have. One is the circles are not touching, they are separate. And the second situation is when the circles are touching externally. And the third one is when one circle is totally within the other circle in such a way that it is touching the circumference of the big circle. Now, let us see how the distance between the center and the radii of these two circles work in the case of the circles which are separate and the circles which are touching and the circle when it is touching internally. Now let us calculate the radius of each circle. Now let us take a strip and calculate the radius of the big circle. Radius of the big circle. Now let us call the radius of the big circle as capital R. Okay. Now let us measure the radius of the small circle. So you take a paper strip and then keep it on the radius and then measure it. Now this small strip is the radius of the small circle. Okay. Now let us assume that the circles are separated. Now this strip, the big strip, is the distance between the centers of the two circles. Now you can notice that this is bigger than the radius of the big circle and the small circle put together. What will happen when the circles are touching? When the circles are touching, the distance between the centers is nothing but the sum of the small circle and the big circle. So that means if the circles are not touching, then the distance is greater than capital R, that is the radius of the big circle, and the small r. If the circles are touching externally, the distance is nothing but the capital R plus small r. Now let us assume that the circle is touching internally. That means the small circle is within the big circle in such a way that the circumference of the small circle is touching the circumference of the big circle internally. Now let us find out the distance between the centers of the two circles, the big one and small one, and let us make a strip. Right. Now the small strip is the distance between the centers of the two circles. Now what happens, in this case, when you put capital R minus small r, then that is the distance. That means capital R is the radius of the big circle. Small r is the radius of the small circle. So when you subtract the small r from the capital R, when you subtract the small r from the capital R, that is what you get as the distance between the centers. So that means if D equals R minus R, then you say that the circles are touching internally. Okay? When the distance between the centers of the circle, when it is greater than the radius of the big circle and the radius of the small circle put together, you can say that they are not touching, they are separate. When the distance is equal to the radius of the big circle and the small circle, you can say that the circles are touching externally. When the distance between the centers of the circles is nothing but the radius of the big circle minus the radius of the small circle, you can say that the circles are touching internally. So, with the relationship of the distance between the centers and the radius of the big circle and the small circle, you can find out whether they are touching internally, externally, or separate.